Today I'm going to start a series on creation. Creation 101. How many heavens are there? 3 or 7? I'm taking a huge risk here, in spite of the fact that we seem to think Genesis 1, chapter 1 to 11 is the whole account of creation, but actually creation is scattered throughout the Bible, both in Old and New Testament. The number of seven heavens really comes from apocryphal texts like the book of Enoch. But in the Bible, in 2 Corinthians 12, verses 2 to 4, St. Paul relates a vision of his. As he says, I was caught up into the third heaven 14 years ago. Whether my body was there or just my spirit, I don't know. Only God knows. But I do know that I was caught up into paradise and heard things so astounding that they cannot be told. The things of God are so astounding that our human vocabulary cannot explain it at all. And in Genesis 1, verse 1, it says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Here we see that the earth has a beginning. The Hebrew verb for created is bara, B-A-R-A, and it denotes the concept of creation ex nihilo. That means out of nothing. And in the book of Hebrews, in the New Testament, Hebrews 11 verse 3 says, the universe was formed at God's command, so that what is seen was not made of what was visible. That means it came from nothing. It wasn't made from something that was already there. The verb bara appears twice more in Genesis 1. In other places, other verbs are being used like asa, which means make or fashion, or have, or haya means be. So bara, creation ex nihilo, something from nothing, it actually appears only 3 times in Genesis. And that's an important thing. See, the creation account can really only be appreciated with a slight understanding of the biblical Hebrew. It was written in ancient biblical Hebrew. So if we read these things in English, we fail to understand the creation story, and therefore we have trouble explaining it to ourselves and explaining it to others. And most preachers avoid teaching on the creation story because of this. When it says that God created the universe and the earth. And then the universe actually means the planets, including sun and the earth. And then it says, let there be light. It's like, did he then create the light from the sun? No, it was already there. So, like I said, it can only be understood if we have if we knew what the Hebrew verb is there, not the English verb. If we read it in English as we do, we will all get bent out of shape. And the other 2 places where the word bara appears is in Genesis 1, verses 21 and 27. And we will get into that in later posts. So here in Genesis 1:1, the heavens really refer to the universe because biblical Hebrew has limited words. So in Genesis 1, verse 1, the stars, the planets, including the sun and the earth, was created. And this is important because, like I said, in Genesis 1, verses 14, we read, and God said, let bright lights appear in the sky to separate the day from the night. For God made 2 great lights, the sun and the moon. He also made the stars. So, like I said, it has to be read in the Hebrew. The English word made seems to indicate that The sun, moon, and stars was just now created and not in the beginning. But here, the Hebrew verb is not bara, so it was already there. So you just move things around. So we have to hold that thought until we get later. This is going to be quite a few postings. Now, next we go to Genesis 1 verse 2. Now, the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. So in order to understand what that means, we have to look at this picture. I don't know if you can see it, but here. If we see the earth, the inside of the earth crust surrounded it in is water, and outside of it is the atmosphere. So here we see that this is the primordial earth. This is the crust, central crust, surrounding all over is water. And outside of it is the atmosphere, which comes atmospheric layer. So we can see there was nothing. It was dark, it's formless, because water is a water earth. So we see the pervasiveness of darkness at the beginning when God moved his attention after creating the universe to earth. In Psalm 104 verse 6, it says, "You, O God, covered the earth with a deep, as with a garment. The waters stood above the mountains." So here, Psalm 104, the authors understood creation story, that initially the earth was covered with water. So that's the primordial earth. And Job 38 verse 9 also says that the earth's surface was dark because the opaque and shrouding clouds, really it means the waters. God says in reference to the sea that covered earth's surface in this way, "I made the clouds its garment and wrapped it in thick darkness." So according to the Genesis account, no continents initially rose above the water, and the whole earth's watery surface remained in darkness. No light reached through earth's primordial surface, as is denoted in Genesis 1 verse 1, when it continues to say, "The earth was empty, a formless mass cloaked in darkness." The creation account focuses on God's preparing earth for life and filling it with life. Here I will insert the question, how long are the creation stories? The Hebrew word here is used as yom, Y-O-M. Again, due to the limited vocabulary in ancient Hebrew, the word yom means many things. It does many duties. So to us, it's just day. And when we think of day, we think of night and day, 24-hour period. And therefore, since we read it in English and in a modern vernacular, we mistake it. Is it a 24-hour period when God just said, "Let there be," and everything just fell into place? But actually, the Hebrew verb used here is yom, and could mean day and night, a 24-hour period, or part of a 24-hour period, or it could mean a very, very long time. I will discuss the length of creation days later on. How long is a yom? How long is day yom 1, yom 2, and so on. And current science says the universe is 13.8 billion years old and the earth is 4.5 billion years old. Given this perspective, we have to be aware that we are reading the Bible in English and not in the ancient Hebrew. And therefore, we fail to appreciate what the original text says. we get confused and therefore unable to explain creation to ourselves and to others. Preachers doesn't like to preach on creation, and I'm taking a huge risk here. Am I brave or naive? We'll see. Why did St. Paul say there are three heavens? It can only be answered as I continue through the creation story, so you have to stay tuned. And I read here again Genesis 1:1 and 1:2. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was empty, a formless mass cloaked in darkness, and the Spirit of God was hovering over its surface. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. So really, to appreciate the creation story, because Genesis 1:1 says, God created the heavens and the earth. Then Genesis 1:2 says, the earth was empty and formless. So you because of the quick transition between the two verses, we fail to appreciate that actually that two verses is actually separated by at least 10 billion years old. If we hold to the scientific account that the universe is 13.8 billion years and the earth is 4.5 billion years. So actually a time lapse of almost 10 billion years separate the two verses. But because we read it that way, we are unable to appreciate the scientific account, because the scientific account does explain the biblical account. Why is the Bible written this way? Understand that the Bible is a book for all people at all times. So if we have inserted this scientific knowledge in there in the beginning, how would the early people, early mankind, understand it? They won't. But again, it's only in the recent few decades that we have very powerful telescopes like the Hubble telescopes that we are able to understand more of our galaxy, the age and things like that, and therefore be able to understand more of the creation story and know and understand. I have faith that the two there's no conflict between the scientific account and the biblical account. It can't be explained. And we have confidence that with each discovery that it will confirm the biblical account more and more so. So it's an exciting exercise that I have to read it more over and over again many times. But since I have to do this, I have to write it out. I'm the one to learn the most. I'm the one to remember. And I have confidence